The night my wife tried to erase me in front of 500 people, she forgot about the only witness that couldn't be bribed. I knew what was inside the envelope before she even crossed the ballroom. I knew what she'd say. I knew exactly where the cameras would be. What I didn't know was how many lives were about to change because of one decision she'd already made. She stopped in front of me. Her fingers tightened around the papers until the edges curled. "Sign it, Richard." Her smile never moved. "Tonight, Harper Global belongs to me." 500 people watched. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked excited. They thought they were about to witness the end of a man. I simply looked down. Rex didn't bark. He didn't move. He didn't have to. The only thing everyone in that ballroom overlooked was standing quietly beside me. 3 months earlier, someone inside Harper Global stole something they believed could never be recovered. They searched every server, every encrypted drive, every cloud backup, every office. They found nothing, because the last place anyone would think to search wasn't inside the building. If you've ever seen the quietest person in the room change everyone's future, you're exactly where you belong. Because tonight isn't just about a divorce, it's about betrayal, loyalty, and a secret worth $500 million. She wanted my signature. Instead, she was about to discover what she'd been standing next to all along. And in less than 1 minute, everything she believed she owned would no longer be hers.
I built Harper Global on one principle. The most dangerous vulnerabilities are the ones you design yourself. I had spent 11 years building walls around that company. Firewalls, encryption layers, air-gapped servers, biometric access protocols that cost more than most people's homes. What I hadn't built a wall around was the people inside it. The breach wasn't external. That was the part that took me 4 days to accept. Someone with full administrative access had been moving through our R&D architecture for 6 weeks, quietly. The way you move through a building you already have the keys to. They hadn't stolen anything yet. They were mapping, learning where everything lived before they decided what to take. And the moment I flagged it to our head of security, the access logs for that username disappeared entirely, which told me everything I needed to know about how deep this went. I couldn't trust the cloud. I couldn't trust the servers. I couldn't trust the building's network. I couldn't trust the staff, not until I knew which ones were involved. What I needed was somewhere completely offline, somewhere biological, somewhere nobody would think to look, because nobody would think to look there. I had been developing bio-integrated hardware storage for 3 years. Not for Harper Global, for a DARPA-adjacent research project I'd never brought to market because the applications made me uncomfortable. It turned out the application I'd been missing was the most personal one I'd never considered. The device itself was simple, by my standards. A hardware-locked offline node, encrypted at a biological frequency unique to one living signature, Rex's heartbeat. The data could only be accessed in the presence of a specific biometric pulse, not a password, not a fingerprint,
not a retinal scan. A heartbeat. The one thing you cannot fake, cannot clone, cannot steal from a living animal without the world knowing. I spent 2 weeks transferring everything into it. Every ledger, every forensic file, every conversation I had recorded without telling anyone I was recording. When it was done, I looked at Rex, and for the first time in 3 months, I felt something close to calm. Because here is what Rhonda, Arthur, Alice, and William never understood about me. I don't fight loud. I build quiet. And I had just built something none of them would ever see coming.
I had spent 11 years learning how to build systems. What I hadn't expected was how useful those same skills would be for watching people dismantle one. Arthur Rowe was the first name I confirmed. He had been with Harper Global for 9 years. I had promoted him twice. I had trusted him with numbers that could move markets. And for 9 months, he had been routing those numbers somewhere they were never meant to go. Alice was more careful than Arthur. She spoke in half sentences, left nothing in writing if she could help it. But careful people still make calls, and calls leave records in places careful people forget to check. William's role was the one that stung most, not because I liked him, but because I recognized what he was doing. He was building a narrative, a slow, credible, documented case that Richard Ballas had lost his edge, that the company had outgrown its founder, that the board would be acting responsibly, not ruthlessly, by removing him. It was clean work, the kind that makes a crime look like governance.
By the end of the 3rd week, I had mapped all of it. The financial routing through Arthur, the legal architecture through Alice, the shareholder manipulation through William, and at the center of it, coordinating all 3, Rhonda, my wife, the woman who had stood beside me at the podium when we rang the opening bell, who had given speeches about vision and legacy, who had, for reasons I was still untangling, decided that the fastest way to own what I built was to remove the person who built it. They had spent months building a trap. I spent 2 weeks understanding it completely. And then I did what I have always done when someone underestimates me. I got very, very quiet, and I got to work. I want to be honest about what the next 6 weeks cost me. Not financially. Something harder to quantify. Arthur presented my own data back to me like I had never seen it. Reordered. Recontextualized. Designed to make 11 years of growth look like one long, slow decline. I sat there and let him. I asked one soft question. The kind that sounds like confusion. The kind a man asks when he's lost the thread. Arthur answered it with barely concealed patience. 2 board members exchanged a look. That look was exactly what I needed. Alice walked me through documents I had already read 3 times in my private lab. I asked her to slow down. I asked her to explain a clause I understood better than she did. Rhonda sighed. Not loudly. Just enough. The sigh of a woman whose patience with her husband has publicly expired. I looked at my hands. I let the moment sit. Inside, I noted the exact clause they were hoping I'd miss. I didn't miss it. I photographed it.
Playing diminished is harder than it sounds. Every instinct I had wanted to correct the record. Every time William reframed something I built, attributed a decision to Rhonda, softened my role in a deal I had personally closed, something in me pulled tight. I let it pull, and I stayed quiet, because the most dangerous thing I could do in those 6 weeks was let them know I was watching. Rhonda needed to believe she was dealing with a distracted man, a man who had lost his edge, a man who wouldn't fight back. She needed to walk into that gala completely confident. So I gave her exactly that. I reached down, The blue LED pulsed once beneath my hand. Everything they needed to destroy themselves, still safe, still waiting, still completely invisible, just like me. I had attended 43 corporate events in 11 years. I had never once brought Rex to any of them. Tonight was always going to be different. I want to tell you what I felt walking into that building. Not anxiety, not anger, something closer to the feeling you get before a storm breaks, when the air pressure changes and everything goes still, and you know with complete certainty that the atmosphere is about to shift. I had done everything I could do. What happened next was already decided. I just had to walk through the door. They hadn't planned for the dog. I knew they wouldn't, because in 6 weeks of meetings, dinners, and board presentations, I had never once mentioned Rex. I had never brought him to the office, never referenced him in conversation. As far as Rhonda's Cabal was concerned, Rex was a pet, furniture with a heartbeat, the most expensive mistake they ever made.
I found my position near the center of the room, not the stage, not the back, the center, where I could see everything. Arthur near the bar, watching me. Alice at the board table, not watching me, which was its own kind of watching. William by the stage entrance, phone still in hand. And Rhonda, across the room, white envelope already visible at her side. She found my eyes, held them, and smiled the smile of a woman who believes she has already won. I looked down at Rex. He looked up at me. The LED pulsed once. We were ready. She wanted a signature. I gave her 30 seconds of silence instead. Long enough for every camera in the room to find its angle. Long enough for Rhonda to mistake my stillness for surrender. She always did. The collar didn't make a sound. That was the part nobody expected. No beep. No mechanical whir. No dramatic announcement. Just a low-frequency uplink. Silent. Instantaneous. Invisible to every human being in that room. Every human being, except the ones who suddenly had nowhere left to look. The room didn't react immediately. That's the thing about evidence. When it's real, people need a moment to accept what they're looking at. Then a board member in the front row leaned forward. Then another. Then someone near the back said a number out loud. And the room came apart at the seams.
I had filed the federal disclosure 6 hours before the gala began. The agents were already in position before Rhonda ever crossed the room with that envelope. She hadn't walked into my ambush. She had walked into one she'd been building for 9 months. I had simply redirected the door. She looked at me, then at Rex, then at me again. And for the first time in 4 years of marriage, she had absolutely nothing to say. I watched her processed. Stage 1, disbelief. Stage 2, calculation. Stage 3, the decision that would define every courtroom appearance she made for the next 2 years. Security. Her voice hadn't broken. I'll give her that. That animal is an unauthorized tech device. It's a security threat. Remove it from this venue immediately. 2 security contractors moved toward Rex. Rex didn't move. Neither did I. The collar, I said, loud enough for the room, is registered as a forensic evidence beacon under federal case number 4471-CR. Interfering with it constitutes obstruction of an active federal investigation. I looked at the security contractors. I'd strongly recommend not touching the dog. They stopped. Rhonda turned, saw them, and for the first time all evening, the performance ended. Not gradually, all at once. The way a building looks different the instant the lights go out. I had recorded every conversation, every private meeting, every half-sentence Alice thought she'd scrubbed, every vote William had quietly lobbied for. All of it, stored in a place no one had searched. All of it transmitted the moment Rhonda handed me those papers and sealed her own indictment. She looked at me one last time. I don't know what she was looking for. Regret, maybe, or an explanation, or some version of the man she had spent 9 months deciding wasn't worth keeping. I reached down. Rex pressed his head against my hand. The LED pulsed. Slow, steady, done. I had nothing left to say to her. The evidence had already said all of it. The morning after the gala, I sat in the chairman's office for the first time without wondering who else was in the building. That was new. That was worth something. I didn't make a speech. The people in that room didn't need one. They had watched the evidence scroll across the screens for 11 minutes. They had watched 3 colleagues escorted out by federal agents. They understood without being told that Harper Global was either going to rebuild or collapse, and that the difference between those 2 outcomes was the decision they made in the next 60 minutes. Every vote was unanimous. It took 14 minutes. Arthur Rowe, Alice Mendez, and William Fargo were formally removed. Their legal proceedings were already underway and not my concern to manage. What was my concern, the only thing that had ever been my concern, was the 1,100 people who came to work in this building every morning and had spent 9 months inside a company being quietly dismantled around them. They deserved better architecture, so I built them some.
I told them the truth. Not the version that protects the brand, the actual version. What had happened, how long it had been happening, what we were doing about it, and what we were building next. A man near the back started clapping before I finished the last sentence. It took approximately 4 seconds for the rest of the room to follow. Rex, for his part, stayed entirely unbothered. As always. People ask me what the hardest part was. Not the technical build, not the 6 weeks of playing diminished in conference rooms, not even the night of the gala. The hardest part was the morning after, when the building was still standing, when the work was still there, when I realized that everything I had spent 11 years building had survived, not because I was louder or faster or more ruthless than the people trying to take it, but because I had trusted the right things, the right systems, the right instincts, the right dog.
Here is what this story is actually about. Not technology, not corporate law, not the mechanics of a perfectly timed exposure. It's about what you protect when everything else is at risk. Richard Ballas didn't save Harper Global because he was the smartest person in the room. He saved it because he never stopped paying attention to the numbers nobody was watching, to the conversations nobody was supposed to hear, to the one loyal presence in his life that had never once given him a reason to doubt it. The quietest ones are always watching. Build accordingly. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to remember that loyalty still matters. And leave a comment. Tell me, what would you have done with 9 months and a secret worth $500 million? I read every single one. Until the next story, remember, the most powerful thing in any room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the one sitting quietly at your feet, waiting.